If you want to support the Missing Witches Project, you can do so by buying our book, reviewing it on Amazon and Goodreads, using offer code Missing Witches when you shop at Foxglove Farm. Become a Patreon patron or pick up some Missing Witches merch at TeePublic.
You aren't being a proper woman, therefore you must be a witch. You must be a witch.
Happy Beltane!
Happy Beltane, friends. Happy May Day. Happy Workers' Day.
Yeah, I remember last year, Risa, we did a Beltane special that was like this. It was just the two of us chatting, and we ended up calling it May Day, May Day. You know, the pandemic at the time was still like a fresh, strange. It's still strange, but it's, yeah. And so here we are like a year and some deep into it now, and it's definitely still strange, but not as fresh.
Yeah, it's funny. I feel I don't know. I feel like many people feel like I just feel like just struggling to find words to understand this time that we're in. You know, I feel like earlier into it, I could have quicker access to some shock or some fear, some like rage on behalf of others, and yeah, it's just harder to find words now for this bizarre new reality and to anticipate what this next change is going to be like. But I do feel I love May Day. Like that, I named my daughter May after two of my grandmothers, and after the Workers' Day and after Beltane. I love May Day. So I do feel a lot of like hope and fondness and like 2-year-old fucking rapscallion skullduggery. She's just such a little terror in the best way, and I kind of need that energy in my life right now, like flipping tables and giggling at things. So I'm embracing that for my May Day, like come hell or high water right now.
Yeah, because last year I think we still had this, like, you know, when you're a beginner at things, you don't like put as much pressure on yourself. You're like, oh, I'm just learning how to do this, so it's fine for me to, you know, make mistakes or not be great at it. But now again, like we're not beginners anymore, so I think there's a more of like an existential heaviness, because we can't just say like, oh, we're just still learning, you know. Now it's like
Yeah.
we maybe should have learned something at this point, but I don't feel like a lot of us feel like we're learning, other than like learning about how messed up stuff is, you know.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty good at wearing my mask. I guess that's something.
Yeah, I mean, I you know, have sympathy with people who are essential workers and have to wear them, you know, or surgeons. Even before in 2019, surgeons,
right,
nurses had to wear these masks all day. So, you know, I don't want to be glib, but I like wearing my mask. For me, that's not an issue. I don't wear lipstick at all anymore, and I don't, you know, like it's just there's a certain freedom in it, you know, like maybe in like a bandito kind of way, like a
totally,
you know,
yeah.
the anonymity. And I think, you know, a lot of people have been talking about Tyra Banks and the phenomenon of smizing, you know, smiling with your eyes. And I think
totally
we've all gotten very good at that, so that hopefully that's something that we can carry with us when we're, I don't know, I'm going to keep wearing I got some masks from some like Canadian, you know, artisans, and they're beautiful. I like some,
same,
like, ooh.
I love my masks, and I love that look, and I love the idea that I'm not quite as prone to facial recognition software. I love that. I love that I am like, you know, the idea of like fight, flight, or fawn. Like I'm definitely a fawner in a lot of situations. And I feel like wearing a mask puts that down a little bit. And, you know, being 40 and not giving a fuck puts that down a bit. And being a witch has helped put that down quite a bit too. But wearing a mask, it's funny how like sort of like the idea of casting glamour, I guess, or putting on a costume, putting on an illusion can let me, feel a little bit less like I have to please, and a little bit more like I don't, if I want to smile, which I often do, I'm going to smile, but I'm not going to try to make everyone like me out in public anymore.
Yeah. keeping a safe distance is like the responsible thing to do. I'm not just a weird,
Yeah.
antisocial hermit anymore. These are the rules. You have to stay away from me.
You have to stay the fuck away from me, and I'm going to call you on your shit if it's below your nose.
Yeah.
Not always. I mean, I do have a lot of empathy and respect for. There's all kinds of reasons why a person might have a medical exemption or like a mental health exemption from fully wearing it properly at all times. I was just in the hospital with May. She's fine, but we were just there. And you do see kids, and teenagers in all kinds of the vast spectrum and rainbow of humanity doing their best to wear it. Like, I'm obviously not calling out people who are just doing their best, but it sure is nice to feel a little bit of the weight lifted of trying to please everybody. And I hope that that's a bit of a gift of this time of like, I just don't want to just get by anymore. The way things have always been. Like I want to like uproot all of that and grow something better and new. And I don't believe in like the total destruction of a system to build a new system. I believe the new system is built in the cracks right before your eyes while you're watching it happen. But man, I am optimistic for that at this May Day. I hope you guys are too.
Yeah, but there's definitely something to be said for the Beltane bonfire of absolutely fucking burning something down.
Yes.
But even then, you're building your foundation on the scorched earth of the bonfire that you had. It would be great. Don't get me wrong. It would be great if we can be like, all right, we're turning the page and we're going to start completely fresh, and we don't have to take into account the entire context of human history.
Yeah.
We can't, and we don't. So yeah, once again, I think there's definitely something to be said for the Beltane bonfire and dancing around it in a bacchanalian trip and imagining, just letting your imagination go wild and thinking about what you could create from the ashes. But we have to remember that we do live in the world.
Yeah. And I mean, I think our whole project has been about, digging into history, digging into those ashes. And Beltane's a great example of that, spending a little bit of time reading about the, hundreds of thousands of people who went on strike for an 8-hour workday and what life was like for those people and how violently oppressed they were. And, that whole history is part of our history, and that's part of North American history, and the way that the sort of hierarchy or the like assembled powers between racism and capitalism came together to really violently oppress those people is like a pretty good lesson for who exactly we're working against now and how long standing those forces are.
Yeah. There's something in the Beltane chapter of our book, which you listeners, thank you oh my goodness, thank you so much. We were really blown away by the reaction to the book. I think it's a little scary, but wow, you, our listeners and beyond, I guess, I think more people have bought the book than are listening to the podcast, it feels like. So, those of you who are listening and are also reading the book at the same time, wow, we just want to thank you so much for the support and just dropping us notes about how you're reading it and how you're enjoying it. And it's really, again, I think I speak for Risa when I say that this is one of the things that has, kept us going throughout these really disconcerting and really demoralizing times that we're living in, where just when you start to be having a good day, like you make the mistake of turning on the news to educate yourself, and the wind gets taken right out of your sails. That happens to Risa and I, just like it happens to you all. And every time someone lets us know that the work that we're doing is like important to them or important to the world, even better, that is just, again, I always get emotional when I talk about it because it's like somewhat surprising to me, but like very, 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 very beautiful.
Yeah, it's hard to talk about, eh? It's so weird. It's so weird that the book like exists. Like there's a copy sitting on one of my altars over there looking at me right now, and it's so bizarre that like it has our names on it and the name of our podcast. And Amy and I have been reading chapters of the book. We're recording the audiobook. So if you want to hear our dulcet tones and swearing and giggling in real life in the book, that will be in the audiobook as soon as we're done. But yeah, so I've just been sitting reading it, and I'm working from Mark's studio now. I've kind of had a change up in setup. So I'm sitting down by the lake, surrounded by, you know, vintage sewing machines and canvas and leather and wood and all of this, and reading this thing that we wrote. And like, I remember writing it. I remember these words, but it also feels like some other spirit is in it. Like, you know, there is this sort of magic about books that they, over time, they just sort of take on, if you're lucky, they take on a little life. And there's just more in there than I really realized. And yeah, and just family members writing to me, sending me pictures of parts of the book that touch them, like the idea that Mark's cousin is reading it or whatever. Like all of that is so profoundly beautiful and surreal and emotional. And you know, I'm just so excited to write the next one. We're just in love with this work. So yeah, thank you for being in this strange project with us. Every time I get to talk to one of you, it makes life better. So
I brought up the book because I just wanted to read like one line from the all the chapters are excuse me. For those of you who don't have the book yet, are based around the Wheel of the Year. And so I'm just looking at, and each chapter has an incantation at the end. And I'm looking at the Beltane incantation, and the line that I'm drawn to in this moment is, life is a dance and I am a choreographer. I'm going to say it again. Life is a dance and I am a choreographer. So for me, like that message is that there's like a beauty and a lyricism and a harmony in the vibration of strings and vocal cords, and you can get swept up in it, you know, like we get swept up in what's going on around us, but we do always have the agency to choreograph our own steps. And granted, most of the time they do have to be in line with the music, you know. We feel compelled to dance to the beat of the music that is going into our ears. But, you know, not necessarily. So we can also bust out some extravagant experimental moves that really have nothing to do with the music that's playing. But I just really, again, like when it feels like you're, for better and for worse, being swept up in a moment. And again, you know, for better, for worse, like everything has these two sides. When you're being swept up in a moment, like you can remember to take back that agency and to choreograph your next step. And so,
yeah, I think that's so profound. I was just reading the introduction, and there's a line like that in there as well that really stuck with me today. You know, I think for me, that's very much about this idea that witches affect the material world. You know, in my interview with Marina that came out, Dr. Marina Magloire, that came out this week, she says, you know, I don't identify as a witch because for me, a witch is somebody with power to affect the material world. And, you know, you don't have to identify as a witch. I don't want to put that on anybody else, but I'm pretty sure you do affect the material world. You know, I know that you do. There's a profound power in each of us that affects the world. So yeah, you're a choreographer. You change the dance.
And even just like our breathing in and out is like affecting our material world, you know. We're like taking in air and breathing out a different kind of air. Like you have naturally changed your atmosphere just by breathing.
Yeah. I think that's something that I love about ritual or spell casting too, that it's like an art form or a form of play that reminds me that I do have the power to make decisions in my life, that I do have the power to shape my life, you know, and to connect back, you know, keeping a book of shadows or a journal or dream journal, whatever, to look back at my life and realize the times in my life where I didn't feel I had agency, and I dreamed of what I wanted my life to be. And then to look at my life now and realize how much of that I built with my hands, or with my fucking sheer dumb luck and faith. So, we changed the world, very profoundly. We changed the world. So,
yeah, especially in that like butterfly effect way of like something small that can like echo through the universe and back, right?
Yeah, planting seeds.
Do you want to tell our listeners about your big changes?
Yeah, so I actually mentioned this in sort of an audio meditation that I posted on our Patreon, which come on over to the Patreon. If you're not there already, it's real fun.
Yeah,
we don't do oh, sorry, Amy.
I was just going to say, yeah, we're definitely going to talk more about our big plans for the
we'll talk more about Patreon, but I will just say, like, we don't do Patreon as a site, just to start more basically, because I know a lot of people in my life are like, what is the thing that you're talking about? Patreon is a site where for audience supported creative work. So you become a patron, like a patron of the arts, right? And you can choose to support Missing Witches. A lot of people will do tiers, like, $5 a month and you get whatever, $10 a month, you get X. We haven't done that. I mean, I wouldn't say that we'd never do it in the future, but for us, it hasn't really been appealing. We're pretty interested in like a pay what you can model. All the shows Amy and I ever did, I think, were pay what you can, which doesn't say much about our ability to make a lot of money doing art, but we're pretty good at building community, I think. But our Patreon is pay what you can. And yeah, we're putting more stories out there. And the one I put there recently, I did share that, like, I recently was laid off. I left my like kind of sort of high power corporate day job. And yeah, it's such a head fuck. I mean, it's so liberating. It's one of these times where it's like, I feel like I got exactly what I was asking for in a way that required me to go through ego death to accept it. And that's happened to me before. So I kind of have to like crawl through the shame and terror of losing my job. And it's not just losing my job, and it's not just because, I did it for a long time and there was, pride attached to it, but also I was a provider for my family for the last several years. Like, my partner was full-time caregiver and I was full-time provider, and that's pretty terrifying to have that rug yanked out from under us. But it's also this incredible gift, right? Like, being in this position means I have a little bit of breathing room, a little space. I don't have to rush straight into the next job, which I might have if I'd gotten fired or if I'd quit. And it happened like the same day we found out how exciting our sales have been for the book. And we got really excited. We'd already been excited about the next book, and we made an outline, and we're just so passionate about what we're doing. It just felt like this huge weight was lifted, and also like I'd been shoved out the door of a plane. So I hope that's what you wanted me to talk about when you asked me that.
No, that's exactly it. And obviously, like, it's extremely terrifying. We live under capitalism. My spouse was just saying, even today, like, because we're looking around and at every turn, someone is being exploited, and but this is the system we live under. And he was like, well, I could just like run naked into the woods and live there. And I said, well, you can't, because that's illegal. Like, there really is no real escape from the system that we live under. So what I'm about to say is very easy to say, let me just say. But I do believe that for you in this moment, this was like, goddess closing a door and opening a window. Again, it's very easy to say, like,
Yeah.
In the ideal world of living our dreams and normalizing living our dreams. Obviously, I get the terror, but I really have this like overwhelming sense that this is one space closing in order to make room for something else.
Yeah, I feel that too. I don't know. I mean, I spend a lot of time with like tarot cards and runes and stuff when I feel out of control. It's like a way for me to feel like I have like a little bit of a glimpse into what's going on, or just that I can do something. And all the messages are so blatantly like, yeah, you know, you're going through an ego death and you're letting go of something and you're moving on to something great and new. Like, it's just so blatant. It's over and over and over again. You're like, okay, I know, but what do I do? It's the, you know, I often wish, so I think Amy and I have joked about this on the podcast before about Amy's ability to turn into mean auntie, sort of like your mean witch aunt that just like doesn't filter shit or sort of like sugarcoat shit. It's just like, I've turned to mean auntie Amy a couple times in my life when I really needed somebody, when I would just be like, but what do I do? I don't even remember what you told me, but it was bracing.
Yeah. I mean, because there's certain times when like, and one of those times is, and I'm not saying that this is related to your situation, but like in general, you know, I'm a pretty easygoing person. I'm compassionate, I'm sympathetic, but I just like hit this wall sometimes where like, if one of my friends is telling me about them allowing themselves to be treated shabbily, let me say again, one of my friends allowing themselves to be treated shabbily. I'm sort of like, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. That's kind of my thinking,
yeah.
You know? And so like my sympathy ends and I start to get mad, you know? I get actually angry and I'll be talking to one of my girlfriends and I'll start using like talk to the manager words. I'm using words like ridiculous, unacceptable, and you know, and I, because I you know, I'm just not a coddler, and if I see one of my friends about to walk off of a cliff, to me the better friend is the one who goes, whoa, what the fuck, what are you doing, dude? You're about to walk off a cliff. What are you doing? Instead of the friend who's like, great job, sweetie, you're doing great, and like watches you walk off the cliff. I mean, to me it's obvious, but sometimes I do like the sympathy switch flips and I become that like Eastern European, you know, like life is hard. Who told you life was going to be easy? You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I've had girlfriends say to me like, well, Amy, it's not easy to this. It's not easy to that. And I'm like, who told you anything was going to be easy? Who told you anything valuable was going to be easy? Whoever told you that something worth everything was ever going to be easy? So yeah, that's something sort of to tie it back to the Patreon, is something that I've been thinking about, like maybe recording these rants because they get a bit monologue-y sometimes, I will admit. Sorry to all my girlfriends who are on the tail end of my monologues, but a lot of it I think is like, again, like when people talk to me sometimes I just want to shake them. So if I can like record that and put it out, maybe it'll like shake some of our patrons into like treating themselves better, you know. Like my mean auntie stuff isn't like you're shit, you're stupid.
It's the opposite.
Exactly. My mean auntie shit is like, why are you denying your power? You are an all-powerful, amazing being. Why are you know, it's like that. So I think that's a message that even the mean auntie herself could use sometimes.
Right. I was going to say that. I was going to say, like, you know, it's so funny. I just flashed on this and I hadn't thought about this in years, but like 15, 20 years ago, somebody showed me this like motivational YouTube video that they liked. And it was just like this, like buzz cut, like kind of angry punk guy, like, you're the fucking shit, so stop fucking taking shit, like, just like swearing at them. And this person was like, I listen to it every day, I don't know, it just doesn't work. I just flashed on that. But yeah, Mean Auntie just believes in you and wants you to be unstuck in that moment. And I do think for you, Amy, it is a time when you are in touch with some of your rawest power. And I think it's nice for you to be in touch with that power. Everybody likes seeing you in touch with that power. That's a good power.
Yeah. It's been a while since I was in a punk band, so maybe it's time to bring that
Oh my gosh,
back to the mic.
Maybe Mean Auntie, plays a little guitar while she yells at you. We'll see how this plays out. Patrons will see how this plays out. We're going to play around with Patreon a little bit more. It feels like the whole podcast for us, has always been like our podcast, our rules. Like we didn't think anybody was listening, and we were just sort of talking to each other, or we were doing research that we were excited about, and we weren't really good at following formulas. And yeah, we're going to keep doing that. And we're just going to play around more on the Patreon, because it just feels like a next level sort of inner circle and the people who are there are so wonderful and kind and supportive of this work of feminist witch history and community. So let's play together a little bit more. We're also going to be doing Zoom parties after season, Zoom parties and occasional random Zoom parties over there, full moon Zooms, just for patrons. And then I think we'll see how the audio goes and how behind we get with audio editing, but we may put the audio out on the main feed for those two, so you can kind of listen in. But patrons will be sent an invite to join in on those and hang out with us, and we can chat about the book and also just get to meet our patrons. Are badass. They're so cool. The projects that they do are so cool. So we'll be spotlighting more of their work, even just for us, like to get to hang out with them more. So we're excited.
Something I'd really like to experiment with. And again, like listeners, that's what Risa and I are doing. We're just like throwing it at the wall and seeing what sticks.
We're just fucking around, guys. We're just our magic is like kids dumping in puddles. We're just making a mess.
We're just splashing around. But I got really excited about the notion of Risa and I attending one of y'all's coven meetings. Obviously via Zoom online. So keep that in mind. If you are in a coven that meets online, maybe drop us an email, and maybe someday this summer you'll have a couple of guests at one of your coven meetings.
Oh yeah, it's so funny, Amy, because we were just talking about that and getting excited about it, and then 2 days later we got invited to a coven book club over Instagram, and we were like, fuck yes, we're coming. Of course we're coming. Said, invite us to your book clubs. Of course we want to come to your book clubs. We wrote a book. We're so excited anybody's looking at it. Please invite us to your book club.
Absolutely. And another thing that we're experimenting with this month is that every May we sort of accidentally tumbled into this, and now we've just sort of, again, it stuck. So we framed it on the wall. But, is fundraising for the Native Women's Shelter of Montreal. This time we want to go a little more national, intercontinental. And so what we're planning is opening up the contributions to all of you. Obviously, we're focusing on the Native Women's Shelter of Montreal, but if you make a donation of $10 or more to your local, again, I know a lot of our listeners are in the United States, to your local Native Women's Shelter or some sort of affiliated org, and send us that receipt, you're going to go into a raffle for prizes. So hopefully we can really, again, Risa and I aren't we've got this goal of raising this much for the Native Women's Shelter of Montreal, because if we can get $10 in every state, that would be great for us too. It doesn't have to be all in one place. If we can just encourage you to make that ritual sacrifice and honoring the people who were here before us, then that would be great.
Yeah, and we would be honored to even know what those organizations are where you
Yes.
live. Tell us, what is the Native Women's Shelter where you live? Let us, like, we want to find out more about them, and share their work. And yeah, and some of the prizes have been donated by patrons and listeners. And then we're going to donate a bunch of copies of our book to send to people as well.
Yeah.
And
so that's,
yeah, and then we're also going to be doing a show, Amy, right?
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so we're going to really kick it off with a panel discussion. I have been thinking a lot, as I'm sure many of you have since the events of January, about the word shaman. So we have put together a panel of Indigenous people, healers, and academics to talk about the word and talk about what it means and who should be using it and maybe who shouldn't. I don't even want to say the word because I don't want it to show up on some audio algorithm, but like, does QAnon shaman qualify? Ooh. You know? And so obviously when Risa and I see something happening in the world, like, I think our first instinct is like, well, we should talk about this on the podcast, you know. It doesn't always happen because things are happening more often than we are releasing episodes. But I really thought like that to bring a group of people together to talk about this world the world and the word shaman could really be like healing and educational. So again, it's kind of experimental. The episode will be coming out on the new moon, which I believe is May 11th. And we will be taking receipts for donations pretty much for, I think, the first 3 weeks of May. And then we'll be announcing the winners on the full moon. But we'll be taking frequent stops during this panel discussion to encourage you to, again, make a ritual sacrifice to honor the earth and the people who were here before us. So that's something that's coming up in a couple weeks that I'm really, really, really excited about.
Yeah, and just to close the loop on that, we will also donate our May earnings from our Patreon to the Native Women's Shelter. We've done that in the past and just feels right. And so that's going to be kind of our little beginning of an offering in the pot.
Yeah.
And we hope that you guys will throw some love into that cauldron with us.
Yeah, I really, Risa, did you read about this recently that one of the Jenner daughters, Kylie, I can never remember which one's which. I'm sorry. I don't mean to be reductive, but I really can't. Anyway, her makeup artist had gotten into a car accident and needed, I don't know, $50,000 for medical bills.
Oh, yeah.
And so she went and wrote this tweet that was like, oh, can you please help? And you're like, I'm going to donate $5,000. This is a billionaire.
Yeah.
And this is a person who, in the time that it took to write the tweet, earned more than enough money to pay that medical bill in full. So let me just say to listeners, please keep us to this. If we're asking you to do something, please know that we are also doing it. Please know that if we're asking you to do anything, whether it's make a donation, whether it's take a deep breath, whether it's drink a glass of water, that we are also doing it. Like, we're in this together and we're not asking you to do anything that we ourselves wouldn't or aren't doing.
Yeah.
And that's that Beltane Bonfire, bitch.
Light it up.
Yeah, that's that fire. That's that fire.
Oh, yeah. Let's have a fire. I need a Beltane bonfire. I got a bunch of shit to burn.
Yeah, I have a sort of, and I think, again, we might have talked about this last year because it's become a ritual, but it really is just very practical. Every year around the end of April, I go around the yard and I pick up all of the limbs and branches that have been fallen by winter winds, you know, and I start assembling them on the pile. And then Beltane is usually the day that I really light the fire to, you know, burn away last year and all the detritus that's fallen, literally, figuratively, you know, into my life, and really burn it then. So I'm really, again, fire to me is like, it's so symbolic, but it's also very, very real. very, very real. Some people would hate my life. So I don't, I always keep that in mind. Like everybody gets off on something different. But one of the things that really turns me on is like having an armload of logs and trudging it into my house. And I don't know why, but like when I'm doing that, I just feel like I'm at one with the universe. And again, for some people, that's their version of hell, trudging logs like in the snow. But for me, it's just like taking these things and like putting them into the weird, special, magical box in my house, and then like. Having that, because obviously it's the physical warmth that you get from the fire. It's that great yellow and orange light that you get from the fire. But it's also just like, any of you who have been camping have stared into a fire and you know how hypnotic it is. There's something primal that just is like also spiritual about the human connection to fire. So again, if you live in the city, I know like a lot of you do, like you can light a candle and conjure that same feeling. If you really,
I used to do candle meditations in the city and just sort of sit and stare at it, because it was just sort of this flicker of something I knew that I needed. I built a fire downstairs today with Meg. It's fucking cold again here in Montreal.
Yeah,
north of Montreal where we live.
I just posted about this, that I thought it was false spring, but that was just first false spring, and now I'm gonna move into false spring.
Yeah, so we built a fire this morning. It was so fun. It's so fun watching her. Like, she just like ran back and forth behind me, moving little piles of sticks. Yeah. Like slowly moving them from one side of the room to the other side of the room. Just like, and she likes to gather them all up in her arms, like you're talking about, and hold them close to her, and then pick all the bits off her sweater and then gather them all up again and pile them up in another pile.
That's pretty much life, though, isn't it?
It is.
Like picking up.
Right. Exactly. It's like, it's like magical play, and it totally is. It's like the labor of life. Yeah. Just moving stuff around, trying to stay warm.
I mean, it's something that I did too when I used to live in the city and I didn't have as much access to fire. Is that I'm big on fire safety. So all of you know, like, we never leave candles unattended. We never, go crazy. We recognize the power of fire as witches. So I had like a little end table that I would like put in the middle of the room, and then put like a jar candle on top, and then kind of just dance around that. I never put a candle on the floor, because anyone who knows me knows that I'm going to kick a candle over. If it's on the floor, I'm going to kick it over. If there's a way to break it or ruin it or trip over it, I will find a way. So again, I have to be very careful. But yeah, you can just put a candle somewhere and dance around it very, very carefully. But like, you can do that.
Turn out all the lights and take off some clothes.
Yeah.
Dance around a candle. You don't have to take off all your clothes. Take off one item of clothing. It's very liberating and symbolic. It's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, get naked if you can and you want to, but take off something. Take off your bra. Like, take off something that's constraining you. Take off your jeans. Take off your sweater. I don't know. Take one thing off. Turn lights off. Have a candle. This is. Yeah. I think anything that sort of breaks us from this feeling that everything is prescribed and that we have no power is really important right now. And the sillier, the better,
Yeah. I was talking to one of my friends the other day about, and you talked about it on one of your episodes, and I ended up talking to one of our guests about it on one of our episodes, with this idea of imagination. And how imagination has sort of been like brutally reserved for children somehow. And it's like a demeaned word, like, but there could be no invention without imagination. There could be none of this.
It's the source of all our power.
Yeah.
It's the source of all our power. Yeah.
And a lot of times it comes from play. In fact, this is not witchcraft related, but to me it is. Did you ever watch the show Silicon Valley, Risa, listeners? Did you ever watch the show? Anyway, the point is this.
No, I maybe like a couple episodes. Tell me.
They're trying to solve a problem. And then they get to talking about how many dicks they could jerk off in a certain amount of time. It's just, you know, how people talk. Like you could be talking about baking pies or whatever. But the point is that they come up with the idea that saves the company from talking about how many dicks you could jerk off in a certain amount of time. And so I think that's really important. And there's something in science, if you want to bring it back from jerking off dicks, fine. There's something in science called focused thinking versus diffuse thinking. And diffuse thinking is the kind of thing that happens when you're taking a walk, when you're, you know, drinking a cup of tea. Focused thinking is when you're studying and you're really actively trying to learn something. And science tells us that both of these things are required for the absorption of knowledge, for the understanding of the world that we live in. And this is science that tells us this, that, you know, and the show Silicon Valley beautifully illustrates, like if you're trying to solve a problem, sometimes you do just need to go for a walk or have a stupid, silly, imaginative, theoretical conversations with your friends about jerking off. And that really can lead you to the correct answer.
Yes.
That's one of the most beautiful and comical. Yeah. So beautiful and comical to me. How ideas happen.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And so profound. Like, I mean, thank you so much for bringing jerky off dicks into the Messy Witches podcast. No, because it's perfect. You know, that I think we can risk getting like a little too serious with ourselves, like even with the witchy stuff, you know, like we can get a little, you know, I love high drama, don't get me wrong. I love, you know, the full regalia of witchdom. I love all of it. I love the darkness and I love the seriousness and I love, you know, feeling deeply in touch with the spirits of nature, but like it's also really fucking fun.
Yeah.
And it's like adults playing, we're playing in the mud, you know, we're playing with rocks, like playing with my kid on all of these little altars around the house, like she's rearranging the stones or whatever and the feathers and telling me where things go. Like that's it's like it's what it's all about for me, and it loosens up a part of me that can get really stuck in trying to do things right, you know. And you know, it does tie, for me it ties back to this idea of being the provider. Like there's such an immense psychological pressure to that has really helped me understand what patriarchy did to men. You know, there really is this incredible violence to that pressure, in that it removes the possibility of play. You know, you really do feel like your every waking thought has to be providing, you know, has to just be financial, has to be how is the money making the food on the table, you know. And it can really remove you from yourself, and that's no goddamn way to live, men.
Yeah.
I love you.
Yeah,
welcome
definitely.
back.
Yeah, I mean, that's we say it all, you know, we say it all the time. Patriarchy hurts us all. Patriarchy hurts us all. You know, that men are only allowed to be playful and affectionate with their pets, you know, or like,
right,
or with the fans of the same sports team as them. There are like these very specific places where men are allowed to have that kind of vulnerable joy, and that is unacceptable and ridiculous.
No, men, get naked and dance around a fire. Stat.
Yeah, I think, I mean, whether, again, and I say this all the time, whether it's metaphorical or literal, I say it about everything. I say it about fire. I say it about gardens. I say it about stars. I say it about ideas. I say it about love. Whether it's real or metaphorical, the actions that you take can affect your life. Again, like a lot of what we do in witchcraft are symbolic acts. And we find them reverberating in our lives. So again, Risa, like you said, like take your bra off. Yeah, this is a practical act, but it's also a symbolic act. You know, men, like exercise your sense of humor and your vulnerability and your joy with your male friends. Yeah. Let's all do that.
Try talking to your materials. I think that's something. Like, you don't need to talk to the universe. That might not be available to you. You know, you could be atheist, which I mostly am, or, you know, you might not feel that the idea of like nature spirits or something is directly accessible to you, although you may feel a profound connection with nature. But often men will have some kind of relationship with their tools and with the material world where they can get into that kind of flow, diffuseness, you know, smoothness of time when they are in working with materials. So maybe that's an opportunity to insert a little gratitude or a little question asking, you know, maybe there's somewhere in there.
I feel like that this is something that's like brewing up in the zeitgeist that I hear people talk about more and more, is this reverence for play, about this idea that it's not something that should be reserved for children, and it's bananas that's the case. I mean, there's so much, again, we already talked about like focused and diffuse thinking, but there's so much that we can gain from just messing around. I think, listeners, you heard my episode about Mayumi Oda at this point, and just like finger painting, you know, we stop finger painting when we're adults. Why? Why is finger painting reserved for like 7 years old and under? That doesn't seem fair or right, you know, because children are they're just playing. They're just taking goopy stuff in their hands and they're messing around with it on a paper. And I think we need to get back to that space as often as we can.
I totally agree with you. I'm trying to find, I quote Donna Haraway on play in the book. I'm going to pull it up. Yeah, here. This is from the chapter on Yule. But we were talking about Donna Haraway says, worlding, embodying, bodying, everythinging. The layers are inherited from other layers, temporalities, scales of time and space, which don't nest neatly, but have oddly configured geometries. Nothing starts from scratch, but the play. I think the concept of play is incredibly important in all of this. Proposes something new, whether it's the play of a couple of dogs or the play of scientists in the field. And then I wrote, when we begin to create our rituals, let's play. Let's holler brokenly and just for fun until our real voices crack out. Because that's what we did, Amy.
That's what we did, and that's what we do. So, yeah. I mean, I don't know what I could possibly add to that, Donna. So maybe we'll end with that and just say, like, happy Beltane, burn some shit down, play, sing, dance. Let's do that today. Let's just laugh and sing and dance and not fucking take it too seriously just for today. I know life is serious and I know life is hard, but like, it's Beltane. Let's just fucking play. Yeah, it sounded like you were like giving me a gap to put the,
yeah, I was like, and
theme music and the theme music. But we're gonna give it one more second just to say, please check out our Patreon. If you've already bought our book, please review it on Goodreads and Amazon. If you haven't bought it, hey, maybe now's maybe now's the time. But yeah, keep an eye on our Patreon and keep an eye on this space for the discussion panel on the word shaman that is coming up in a couple weeks. That's going to be accompanied with our fundraiser. There will be prizes. If you're into prizes as a motivating factor, then they will be there. And in the meantime, Risa and I just want you to laugh and sing and dance and play just for today, babes. Just for today.
Yep. We love you guys. Stay safe and blessed fucking be.
Happy Beltane!
You must be a witch.
If you want to support the Missing Witches Project, you can do so by buying our book, reviewing it on Amazon and Goodreads, using offer code Missing Witches when you shop at Foxglove Farm, become a Patreon patron, or pick up some Missing Witches merch at TeePublic.